Now, plenty of businesses are still trying to pick up the pieces after the pandemic, particularly in Victoria, home to the world's longest lockdown, of course. Dan Andrews has packed his bags and moved on without facing any sort of an inquiry or royal commission, without having to justify his onerous restrictions, which sent some businesses to the wall. Jim Penman is the founder of Jim's Group, the massive franchising business. He took up the fight for compensation on behalf of contractors who were forced to down their tools and sit at home. They weren't allowed to mow lawns on their own in the open air, even while council workers were still able to do that in groups. We caught up with him during the pandemic, and Jim's legal action about this is now hit a brick wall. So he joins me now with an update. Thanks for joining us, Jim. Tell us what's happened with your legal attempt. Has it been rejected completely?
Absolutely. They actually said, the judge said, and we appealed it and we lost again, they said the government had good reason for shutting you down, but doesn't have to tell you what it was. They refused point blank to give any health justification for the shutdown.
That's outrageous, isn't it? They're going to say that they had to shut you down, and you know it's ridiculous because these are people who are going to be mowing lawns on their own in the outdoors. There was no risk at all, yet they won't share any reason for doing it, any justification, or give you any compensation.
Yeah. Well, it's actually quite clear they had no reason at all. Otherwise, they'd give it, wouldn't they? Why would you go to court to stop from being asked to give you reasons if you had reasons? In fact, the government did get health advice from their own department, Health and Human Services. They put out a 4-page document describing exactly who could and who couldn't work to keep the epidemic in place, like you could in restaurants and so forth. Right at the top of it, sole contractors working by themselves allowed. 4 days later, the Premier gets up at a conference and says you can't get your lawns mowed, your houses cleaned. It was a purely whim of the Premier, done for political reasons. There was no health advice, and they've basically admitted that.
It's a shocker. Now, a lot of your contractors would have done a lot of dough, of course. They were sitting idle for a long while. Did they at least have JobKeeper to get them through?
Most of them did. But some, we had one lady who was a student on a student visa. She had no job. She was getting threatened with eviction. We actually said you can come and stay at our conference centre if you get kicked out. But other franchises were giving her, food vouchers and so forth, so she would keep going. It was a real time of suffering. And a lot of people hurt too. I know personally 2 franchisees lost their marriages, their families, their homes as a direct result of the lockdown. I know one young kid committed suicide, 20-year-old, who was working in our department. There was terrible cost to this.
It's just shocking. You've hit a brick wall. Just finally, do you have any other legal options? And do you believe that this just adds to the case for a National Royal Commission? Because as well as looking at measures put in place and medical science, it should be looking at these sorts of issues, how businesses were affected.
I absolutely do. And the really important thing about it is not just 4 years ago. There will be more epidemics. The way the world is now, there's bound to be. Next time, we've got to make sure that restrictions are based on health advice, protecting the health, mental and physical, of Australians, not on political whims and grandstanding.
Well said, Jim, and thanks so much for joining us. Jim Penman there, who's fought tooth and nail for his contractors there, his franchisees, and he is dead right. We need a full Royal Commission. We just have to get to the bottom of this because we'll face it again and we've got to do it better next time.